Tonight on Ship Chasing, we're not just talking about free agency. We're drafting free agency. That's right. All the moves that happen, which ones are the most impactful for fantasy? Before we start getting into our drafts around here, we need to see what's going on with this new draft board. And Karain, Gretch, and myself are going to go from best to least important here in the post-free agency landscape. It's Ship Chasing. Let's do it.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your sight.
Jamar Alpha Play Chase.
Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally this boys. You're right.
All right. Backstage, Gretch just saw Dune. A little nerd chasing here. Fellas, how you doing?
Doing good. Just
Good.
message Gretch a picture of the. They actually found this on a Reddit post where they're talking about how Dune ripped off Star Wars.
Oh, it is so close. Yeah.
But of course, and I think
the
it's
Sarlacc pit or whatever.
the Sarlacc pit and the sandworm. Very similar.
Yeah.
Dune
He doesn't see it yet. He's gonna see it, but he's like, these guys are talking about Sarlacc and sandworms. Like, what the fuck's going on?
It's not even that. It's just like I just saw Oppenheimer last week. Like that's
I just saw it. I just saw it last week too.
I did too for the first time.
Okay.
Literally,
Well,
that was my movie before Dune.
That was good.
There you go.
Yeah.
So like, how many? What's the runtime on Dune? How many hours is it?
The Dune
It's
2 was
under
246.
Yeah.
246. Yeah. Because I ended up having to watch Killers of the Flower Moon like in literally.
I
5
still haven't
chunks.
seen that.
You
I
guys
haven't
see
either.
that. But Oppenheimer was like, let's go to the theater. I don't want to watch this in 5 different chunks at home. I want to watch this all at once. So we finally had a babysitter. So yeah, I don't know. I average like 1 movie in theaters a year, but Dune has gotten enough praise and enough hype that I might have to try to carve out time for it.
It's
I
fun.
would recommend it. I'm the same way. I average about 1 a year. We don't ever go because I mean, actually, when I guess I average more. I average about 1 a year that was like an adult movie. But we take the kids to go see, like when Trolls came out, we went to the theater. You know, like that's my theater stuff these days. But I'm the same way. And then also watching, like I actually watched Oppenheimer in 2 parts earlier this week. I watch a lot of movies in 2 parts, like you've described before. Like I do my TV watching at night, and it's like, or movies, and it's like, I'm gonna go to bed. Like I'll watch this later. But Dune,
it's a shame you guys don't have the attention span. I sat down and watched it in 1 sitting. I drafted a couple big boards, okay, but I sat there and I watched the whole movie.
Pat, enjoy your freedom while you have it, buddy. Enjoy it
right? Exactly.
All right. I feel like I can't. I'm trying not to do the recency bias thing because we always do like, this is the most crazy, whatever. This does truly feel like one of the most insane free agency periods that I can remember.
Like the NFL it definitely has been. The NFL has definitely been on a trajectory toward more player movement over the last decade. And I think that's also very undeniable. The one offseason 2 years ago with Tyreek and Devonta Adams and A.J. Brown all getting traded in the same offseason was the craziest offseason that I remembered as an NFL fan. That wasn't all free agency based. That was a lot of trades. Some of them happened like during the draft. I think you're right. I think this was the craziest start to free agency that I can ever remember for sure.
Well, a lot of running backs moved around, and that's just going to change. I mean, even more than wide receivers in some ways. Like running backs changing teams has such a massive impact on fantasy football.
Yeah.
Dude, there were 7 teams that lost. I believe their lead. I don't know if it's all 7 lost their lead rusher last year. Like Aaron Jones probably didn't lead Green Bay in rushing, but then also signed a new name to replace that person all within the first like 24 hours, right? There was like I had a tweet about how there was like these trains of like Baltimore has Gus Edwards leave and brings in Henry. Gus Edwards goes to the Chargers and loses Eckler. Eckler goes to Washington. They lose Gibson. I guess he wasn't the lead rusher in Washington. You have Green Bay losing Jones and getting Jacobs. You have Houston losing Singletary and getting Mixon. The Giants losing Saquon and getting Singletary. The Eagles losing Swift and getting Saquon. It's just like a bunch of replacing all the way down the line.
You could also throw the Colts because the Zack Moss, went to the Bengals to replace Mixon.
he started that train, and Swift leaving goes to Chicago, ends that train. You have Pollard at the beginning of the Tennessee train and Gibson at the end of the New England train. It's a lot of movement.
Yeah, because as far as the musical chairs, I mean, the spots that are super clean right now for running backs, right? It's Dallas. That is like one of the choice spots.
Whoever gets drafted to go to Dallas is going to go up a lot in ADP.
But the way the musical chairs worked, it wasn't like a ton of vacated spots. Do you guys think that there's not a coincidence in that these teams aren't hype on this rookie class and they wanted to get their houses in order before the NFL draft?
I do. Yeah, I'm actually irritated with myself that we should have been higher in our rankings on that leg up on the general overall. I felt like, look, these running backs, and this may still be the case, these running backs are going to be overall a little disappointing, on like their 6th, 7th years in the league, on new teams and all that. But like, there's just not that many running backs coming in. So I do think that some of these new ADP rises will hold. And so, could have gotten Josh Jacobs or whatever.
Yeah, I also think that would have been a pretty good foresight, because I was saying as recently as last week on our show here that I thought some of these backs are going to linger well into free agency. I mean, I don't think I've ever been wronger on a prediction than that. Like, it was pretty funny to see before free agency even started, every one of those names finding a home. No one is lingering this year. We were talking about how last year Zeke lingered into August, Dalvin Cook into like the start of the season, and Fournette into like week 10. He ends up finally signing. And other guys lingered in well past the first week of free agency and then signed in like April and stuff. I don't remember all the names and all the details, but shocking how many running backs. I mean, the cap went up higher than all the teams were working off of and projecting. They had about $10 million extra to spend. I'm glad to see for the running back position that a lot of those teams were like, we'll use that to address running back in free agency. I also think it has a lot to do with the draft, like you guys were talking about. I think it's both the running backs being weak and the perception of the receiving class, which is obviously really strong, because teams are like, they want to address the trenches.
Really weak free agency class for receivers as well.
Right. But when they're planning out their draft, I think a lot of teams don't want to just take like all skill guys through the draft. So I think they kind of bucket like their running back and receiver picks are kind of in one bucket. Their trenches picks, their maybe like pass rush, pass secondary, pass defenses picks, like edge and corners. And I don't know, but different like objectives they're trying to accomplish. And so I mean, if they think they can take a receiver in the draft, they're less. I mean, I think that also leads to the running back spending in free agency, where it's like we don't want to be taking receivers and running backs and not addressing depth at the lines or whatever through a whole draft.
I mean, I think it's partly just as simple as like these guys have like first round grades, and there's always like 11 first rounders in the draft, and then there's like then they have like there's like 25 second rounders or whatever. There's probably teams that don't have a first or second round grade on any running backs, and there's like there's lots of running backs who are a third round grade, I would imagine, but like you're just like, well, shit, we don't have any running backs that we like, so let's go pay whoever.
But it does seem to have the effect where it's like we have obviously seen the trend in the NFL with the devaluation of running backs, less going early, all of this stuff. But this free agency felt a lot like the guy who's like, I'm going to try out 0 RB in a draft. And he gets and he's like, I'm a running back. Josh Jacobs, there you go. Like, dude, just relax. Like, you can grab Jalen Wright in like about a month. Just chill out, man.
Well, but that's definitely the case. But then also, like, I think it's so fascinating that so many of the teams that were signing backs were also losing a back, right? So, and those little trains I was talking about, like, it was a high profile one, then a lower profile, high profile, lower profile. We're like, the Giants, we're going to let Saquon walk. We'll get a lower profile back in Singletary. The Texans, we'll let Singletary go. We're going to get a higher profile back and bring Mixon in. And like everyone was either upgrading or downgrading.
Like 10 seconds. Like 10 seconds. They're like, oh, shit, you trade like 7th round pick. You get Mixon's deal. Mixon's actually pretty sweet because he's already paid. So you like get to play out this like fairly cheap deal relative to like what you're giving on these guys on new deals. Like that's kind of nice. You don't have to. Then they give them an extension. Like, what are you doing?
Oh, I missed that.
They gave him a 3-year extension.
What the
That's
fuck
nuts.
for?
That's the whole point was you didn't have to do
A
that.
1 year rental. That's the appeal.
That's the appeal. I thought that's why you
I
traded
missed
for
that
him.
too. I missed that they gave him an extension.
13 million in guarantees. They were gonna Bengals were gonna cut him, and then the Texans came in and made the trade.
Like, we'll take this rental. That's good. 7-round pick for the rental. You know, okay. Sharp.
13 million in guaranteed money?
Nope, not sharp. Real dumb.
What are they? He's not a good back. He's never been a
He's fine. He's fine. Like
he's fine. You don't need to pay him 13 million guaranteed. Do the rental.
Definitely shouldn't do that.
Man, especially the team that just had a random free agent like usurp the running back that they drafted that thought was going to be their bell cow back of the future.
You have an awesome system
to pivot and be like, hey, sunk cost fallacy. No, we'll just play the best guy. What the fuck are we doing here?
He turns 28 in July. I mean, you give him obviously it's not going to be he's not going to play all 3 years, but it's not like he's not young, and he's taken a lot of touches over the last few years. The Bengals used him up. They did the very traditional like we're going to use him and then let him walk thing. He's averaged over 300 touches over the last 3 years and had 280 plus seasons earlier in his career. Tons of touches for him. This is wild. I didn't see this.
I missed this. Yeah, insane. 3 hours ago, Mixon signed a 3-year, $27 million contract.
Oh, I was watching Dune.
Oh man,
yeah, that's good. Good for you.
All right. So this is what I was thinking, and instead of just kind of going around and bouncing around, I was like, what if we pull up one of our proprietary draft
Is this Gretsch.com or is this a different web sheet?
This is Overzet.com.
Overzet.com.
It's Overzet.com. Okay.
It actually stole a lot of the code from Gretsch.
No.
We're also gonna, I figure we can leverage random.org here to determine the draft order. So I will randomize our names here. Karain draws the Influencer 101, Gretsch 1-2, and now.
So what's our ground rules? Like, what constitutes a pick?
So a free agency move, I think we can count re-signings and trades. But to me,
it's more fun.
This is obviously going to end up being very arbitrary. We're going to end up mad at each other and arguing semantics.
Oh yeah,
I know.
Wasn't this the whole point of this? I only agreed to argue.
But this is what I would say.
Her sister was a witch, bro. Let's look at that out. Grow up, Doug.
These are the only ground rules, okay? The spirit of this exercise are which free agency moves have the biggest impact on fantasy. Okay. So I'm just going to say right now as an example, like, I guess you could argue even
just let me take my 101.
I'm not going to say anything.
I have a clear 101. I feel super strongly about what the 101 is.
I feel very strongly about who it is too, so don't fuck it up. But real quick, there's going to be a lot of bickering and from the peanut gallery tonight about how I conditionally format this. And I just want everyone to shut their mouth, sit back, and enjoy the show and let me cook in this document. Okay.
Cool. Can you zoom in a little bit more though?
Oh, I will be zooming in. Craig, you're on the clock.
All right. Clear 101 here, guys. Kirk Cousins signs with the Falcons.
I thought you were going to say Joe Mixon to Houston.
No. Changes so many things. I mean, we're getting huge boosts to Kyle Pitts and Drake London's ADPs. Bijan flipped Amon-Ra. Obviously, it hurts all the Vikings guys. Changes the way we're stacking. It's just massive. Clearly the 101 here.
It's massive from a real football sense too. I mean, I'm thinking about it like you just did. Obviously, all the ADPs and everything, but from like a real football sense, from what their offense is going to look like, what their pass rate over expected is going to be so different. Their play volume and pass volume and all that shit. It's going to be such a different team.
Here's how big it is. We're going to draft Darnell Mooney in best ball now. That's how big of a deal this is.
Kirk to Minnesota.
Hey, I said the peanut gallery needs to shut the fuck up.
Kirk is bigger than Minnesota is how I read this. Is that the way you wanted it?
And the other thing too, like for judging why it's so impactful, because this one move is going to boost 3 to 4 different ADPs in like a pretty meaningful way.
Yeah.
Obviously London is already a fixture of the second round. Like he's already perma-locked there in drafts just because there was such a long tier after pick. Like or wide receiver 11. It was like after DJ Moore came off the board and everyone's like, we are willing to thrust anyone up here.
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts is going to scream up a good 20 to 25 picks. Mooney's obviously going to push up. And it seems like it's giving the market even more confidence on Bijan. I had to battle the Badge Bros on Wednesday. They wanted to take Bijan over Breece Hall.
I think he flips
my
him.
foot down.
I
I
think he
know.
flips
That
him.
seems crazy to me, though.
Yeah. I mean, I love Breece, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't bother me that much. Like I mean, they're both really good picks. So it's like I want both. So, you're not going to be able to get super overweight on either one in the first round. So if it is the case that Bijan goes ahead, I'll just take my Bijan, I think.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. It's close, but
it's close. It's very close. Like if you ask me like who I would put there, it would be Breece, but both guys are coming off torn Achilles. It's like somewhat similar situation. You're betting on the talent. So I'm not like too caught up in it. I was annoyed, honestly, by the Drake London stuff. Chris G was immediately like, I would take him like right after DJ Moore, like you said. And I was like, what the fuck's going on? We had this guy in like the third and fourth round. Like we were ahead of him in the leg up ranks for a while, but not like a priority. And I thought that Kirk was going to go to Atlanta. So I'm just like, man, I guess we really should have had him as a priority pick because just the level of like not priced in that this Kirk move was surprising to me. But I do get it with the point you're making, Pete, of like how flat that tier was. I think it's flat too. So shit, like if London ends up in the middle of the second, I'm kind of coming around to that.
There's also just an excitement bump when you're talking about like a tier, like something's going to bump someone else up and he's going to slide at a certain point. I mean, maybe not the whole, like slide a ton, but I don't know. I mean, this is probably the highest that these guys are going to go, right? Immediately after the move.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everyone wants their if they don't have them yet, they're like, oh my God, I got to make sure I get this guy. Yeah.
And I think, there's a part of it feeling flat is there's a lot of room for the market to want to anoint someone for that slot. Like an example would be, say we got the most bullish news on Tank Dell's injury return timeline and there's like 0 questions. I think people will happily start selecting him in the mid-second of drafts, just knowing what he did as a rookie, that offense. Like, I think there's room for people to anoint someone into the mid-second from basically that tier through like Neighbors, all of those guys. Like everyone just kind of reshuffling them how they see fit.
The Texans bringing back Noah Brown and Schultz, I think also it's not like a guarantee of anything, but it's a good sign. We're moving in the right direction for them not to spend major capital on a wide receiver, which I think is like the other thing here with Dell and Nico, frankly. But yeah, they brought Bell. They kind of running it back so far. My guess is they do add someone, but maybe they add, like a round 4 guy or like a late round 3 guy or something like that.
Yeah. All right, Gretch. Anything else on the Falcons stuff? I completely agree. When you think about which team's identity and just even how they run plays, how the offense is run, everything about it, I don't think you're going to find a team with a more of a 180 shift next year than the Falcons.
It would almost be hard for that to possibly happen.
It's one of those things where it's like, I don't think over the last 5 years you can find a better example. They were they were like a negative 9% pass rate over expected. The next lowest team, they were dead last. The next lowest team was like negative 5%. They were almost double. And the year prior, they were negative double digits, but they were 31st because you had the Bears even further. But over the last 2 years, their pass rate over expected has been so far to the negative. Just getting Kirk, getting Cousins gives them the potential of being a positive pass rate over expected team. But it locks in that they're going to at least be close to neutral, which in and of itself is already like, we're talking about like a 10 percentage point shift, which no other team will have. That's just in the pass rate over expected metric. It's one metric, but it's a massive shift, and they could feasibly be like plus 5%. They're in a dome. They're going to have late season games in the South. They're not going to be they're on the AFC North. They're not going to be playing Cleveland at the end of the year. They're going to be playing maybe in Tampa and Carolina or at New Orleans. Like they could be one of these teams that has 3 straight dome games in the fantasy playoffs, right? Like,
and they have a good offensive line in addition to, some solid is so like this is suddenly like a very fun team.
Yeah. Yep. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be very fun. All right, Gretch. 102. I don't know if it's as clear as the 101 here. I think there's a couple directions.
It's extremely
101 was
unclear.
extremely clear.
I went to Dune after I heard about this idea and didn't think about this at all, but all I had in my head was Kirk Cousins, number one.
That's the same as me. I was like, you can do this, and I was like, I hope I get the 101.
I'm going to teach you guys a little something about scarcity in drafting. There's a lot of running back moves I could choose, but I don't want to. So I'm going to go to what I think was a really impactful move in, I guess, technically not even a free agent move. In the receiving game, I'm going to say Diontate Johnson to Carolina is my pick. And I don't. It's funny because both of you guys talked a lot about ADPs, and no, that's a fair point. Both of you guys talked a lot about ADPs and the fantasy impact. When I envision this, I was thinking again like more like the NFL impact. I think this is a super impactful move because it's what we need
what
to
are we
have.
Doing with this? This is Atlanta or
fuck up.
This makes no sense.
The
Yes, it
Atlanta
does.
thing.
It should be Atlanta, not Minnesota.
Have you ever seen the Atlanta? Why did I say Kirk to Minnesota?
That's what we're talking about. I knew he was going to get there.
I thought you were trying to go with colors. Do not come at my colors.
Okay, sorry, Ben. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's great. Bryce Young was bad in year one, objectively bad. I think the offense was bad. We knew that the receiving core was trash coming into the year. It's something we talked about a lot in the summer. I've already admitted that it was probably a mistake on my part to not recognize there was a possibility for one Adam Thielen to then benefit from that, which he did. Like he's the only competent pass. Like he's the only receiver with a competent like pass, and he was able to obviously at least use some veteran savvy to like get open underneath and get like 9 million targets. But essentially they had nobody who could create separation and get open downfield, and it was a huge issue for Bryce Young. I'm picking this second overall because I think it is going to give us an opportunity to learn a lot more about Bryce Young because we know Diontate Johnson can get open, can create separation, can draw targets. He's done it since Toledo. He's done it his whole career in Pittsburgh. His targets per out run have always been incredibly high. I'm not like hyped. I'm not like hyped on Bryce Young, and I'm not even like that hyped on Diontae, other than the fact that I feel pretty confident he's going to get a ton of targets. He low key had probably the best year of his career this year, though. So that's the other thing I'll throw out there. He had a higher ADOT. We've talked for years that he's had yards per target figures in like the 6s and like just needed to be average. He was at like 8.2 this year, which was like average. He missed a bunch of time, but his targets per run were solid, and his yards per target were solid with a little bit of a higher ADOT. He's gotten rid of the drops issues. He's a good receiver that will get open and draw volume, and Bryce Young really needs that. So for me, part of it is just like, Carolina sucks. You don't want to be all in on any of this or anything like that, but it's interesting for the NFL to get Diontate Johnson into Carolina. It's a good fit for Diontate Johnson, who's like perfect to be a guy who runs routes alongside Jonathan Mingo and other dudes who suck and can just eat up all the targets. Like, I'm going to have Diontate Johnson. Like, he's going to get a lot of targets in this offense.
Thielen's still there. I mean, it's not – I think it's like somewhat.
How far have you dropped Thielen in the ranks, Pat?
Pretty substantially. Because the whole point was that he was just like –
Lord.
He's just like free, targets that you pair with rookies, but that didn't work because then they signed Diontate Johnson. So, yeah. But I have he's going to run a lot of routes out of the slot and get targets too.
I have a
pretty Curtis Samuel type.
Yeah, when I read up my like targets per out run pieces that I've been writing, I talk about how targets per out run needs context, and we've talked a lot over the years about how you need to apply context. I have a pretty negative opinion of how good Thielen's stats were. Like surprise, but when you watched Carolina, it was a non-functional offense. We talked about this some during the season, I remember, when we had Carolina, I think, on Thursday Night Football. But it was a non-functional offense. The targets he was getting were not something that they wanted to even be like we were basically saying during the season, as soon as they get something else going, a lot of these Thielen targets will go away because they don't want that. Like, no team wants what they were doing with Thielen to actually be their offense. A lot of his targets were literally tight end, like – there was Zach Ertz 5-yard curls.
He's been a tight end for like 5 years. So
right.
Yeah.
But they had so little down the field in terms of winning routes and winning targets that it would just be checkdowns to Thielen that the defenses didn't even care about. They'd give you, at a low ADOT, he didn't have a ton of yak. He did have a few like splashy plays at times when they were like trailing and against like soft defenses and stuff. But like, it's a film take.
He's down to 190 in the rankings, so I'm not.
Yeah. But so my point is,
but I think he could hurt Diontae.
I don't think he could. That's what I'm saying. I think he didn't earn very many of his targets. If Diontae is there to earn targets, he hurts Thielen, not the other way around, right?
Like, just like I don't want anyone there. Like I want Diontae as the only guy, and I want him to be the Thielen and Thielen to go away because it's just like not a good. I thought you were going to go more on the Pickens side of this. We needed this for Pickens. This opens up, like there's no volume. Like the only way Pickens was going to be interesting is if Diontae was gone, and now he is, and it's like, all right, it's going to be a little painful when it doesn't work because they're not going to throw it all. But at least we can hope.
I'm pretty down on Russ, and I mean, Pickens' downfield profile fits with the little that he does. I mean, he basically just chucks it downfield. He doesn't throw to the intermediate anymore. So, I mean, I kind of didn't even – I think it has an impact, obviously, to lose Diontae from that offense. But Diontae as a fit with Russ was horrible. And I thought Pickens was, like, at least moderate. And now that he's gone, it's better for Pickens. But, like, it's still, like, not great, you know? So, it's better for Diontae to move away from Russ and go somewhere else is sort of the way I'm looking at it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I'm not going to take Pickens, but – I do think he's a decent proxy for what Russ did with Cortland Sutton. As far as just taking the shots downfield, use him in the red zone, and way less target competition. They seem like a virtual lock to add a wide receiver at some point in this draft. They've been very good at that over the years too.
That's true.
And I just can't imagine they would roll into the season with just like Pickens and Calvin Austin.
They're talking about Tyler Boyd as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
It's just like at this stage of his career, a much worse version of Diontae. That would probably be good for Pickens if Boyd landed.
Yeah, I agree. I bet they draft somebody, but Pickens is good. It's just like the situation was about to be truly horrendous, and now it's just bad, which is at least, we don't like truly horrendous.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be clear, this pick here is not like as fantasy related. That was my whole long soliloquy as much as it's.
It's a little pick right there for sure.
I tweeted that it was the most necessary move in free agency to get Bryce Young, Diontate Johnson is just a huge move. The Panthers still suck, but like it's an interesting move. We'll get a look at Bryce Young with a competent receiver. Hopefully they draft someone too. Anyway, we'll see.
All right. I am viewing this through a fantasy lens, since it is biggest fantasy impact. And I think one of the biggest ADP risers we are going to see is Josh Jacobs becoming a cheesehead.
The ADP was pretty set here. Gretsch was jumping ahead. I think Jacobs is a clear 102 here.
Yeah, I think just based on, let me see, I had it pulled up where he was going before. But he was like 6th, 7th round pick. Yeah. And he is going to, I would not be surprised if by like BBM, he's like a 2-3 turn pick again.
I think he will be. I think
it seems like you guys are both doing this strictly off ADP shifts, which I have said was not.
Well,
I said the most impactful moves for fantasy.
Well, Saquon would be more than Jacobs.
No, I think Jacobs is more impactful because it led to the cutting of Jones.
Okay.
Again, I'm not. ADP isn't the sole.
But that's it. That's how impactful was the signing? I think the Jacobs signing was more impactful because, frankly, we can talk about Saquon when we get there. But I feel pretty strongly that the Jacobs signing was a bigger domino to fall in the fantasy landscape than the Saquon signing.
Well,
I'm not even going to debate that, but I wasn't. I mean, again, I like the size of the domino in the fantasy landscape, or size of the NFL domino, or how are we? I guess we're saying
this was fantasy the whole time. I thought it was fantasy. Wasn't it pitched as that?
Yes.
No, it just says most impactful. That's what I asked before I even did the Diontae pick. That's fine. I'm going to get a good running back coming back.
I was about.
We're already arguing.
The whole
First
point
round
was
is
there
barely
for there
over.
to be ambiguity, so we'd have something to argue over. I guess the question is this: what do you think was going on in the market for the Jacobs stuff?
Wait, hang on. Would you guys want to do a draft of the most impactful free agency moves for fantasy? That's the pitch. That's in Discord.
Oh, is that in the Discord?
That's a
It's
Discord
also
message.
the title of the episode that everyone's staring at right now.
Oh, it says for fantasy there too. That's amazing. On the Google Doc, it says free agency draft, and on the tweet, it just says the most impactful free agency moves. It doesn't say for fantasy.
Hey,
Glad you enjoyed Dune.
hey, look, I purposefully threw some ambiguity into it to see if I could get Jacobs to fall to me.
You can rewind
Sharp as hell.
to me starting my Diontae soliloquy, and I said I wasn't interpreting this as a fantasy related at the start of my soliloquy.
I was gonna let you cook. Everyone gets to cook around here, however they see fit. So here's the question: If Jacobs ends up at the 2-3 turn, is it like last year where you're just kind of like, yeah, I'm going to be even with the field at that price? Are you underweight? Are you excited about him there?
I want to start the draft over. Diontae to Carolina is not the most impactful, second most impactful fantasy move.
You had your Diontae.
I'm on tilt.
Loaded up.
Shenanigans.
This is getting thrown out. This draft is getting thrown out.
No,
Getting thrown out.
Gretchen's first round pick tore his ACL in the preseason. You can still draft a winning team. All right.
It's a little tougher with 4 rounds.
Sure.
This is trash. We're gonna need to go 12 rounds for me to make this up.
Oh yeah, I forgot AJ Dillon re-signed with the Packers. Now my pick sucks too. Yeah.
I think that's great. I think that's great for Jacobs, because I was talking with Davis earlier, and he was saying like that. They always use a committee, and so Dillon stinks. Like your concern, if you're interested in Jacobs, is that they draft somebody, and like I don't know if Jalen Wright's any good, but I'm pretty sure he's better than AJ Dillon. And there's like a million guys like that. Where at the end of the season,
re-sign a team-friendly deal with the Packers, like.
I doubt he'll market.
Yeah, but go sign a cheap deal and like go to Dallas or something.
If I'm Dallas, I'd rather have Rico Dowdle, and then I'll just draft somebody.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Where is this? It's probably outside of Jacobs going to Dallas. This was the best possible landing spot for him. I guess you could say the Ravens too.
Oh,
I think it's better than the Ravens.
Okay.
Right? Because they're going to throw to him.
Right. Yeah.
So my thinking is like, okay, it's not just that he goes there; it's that they cut Jones and they give him this big contract. Jones was like good the last time we saw him. I know he's dealt with hamstring stuff, and maybe they just got sick of that. That's what Davis was saying, and I get that. But also Jones, I think if I'm just drafting for this one season as an NFL team, I would take Jones over Jacobs. Jones looks really good still.
I mean, Jones in the playoffs was a revelation last year.
Yeah. So I'm like, man, this is like a pretty big like organizational shift. It's at running back, so it's not huge, but they are indicating in numerous ways outside of just the contract, getting rid of Jones, that they're putting their support behind Josh Jacobs. I normally don't like to kind of bet on the volume, and if he goes in the second round, I won't. But if he's in the third round, I'm comfortable with him there. That's where we have him already in the ranks, because and if you want to get him, you kind of got to take him there.
Yeah. I'm trying to think through it from a process standpoint. You already said that you wish you had him higher. What would have been a landing spot for him where his ADP was justified?
I mean, Dallas, I suppose, but this is one of the ones I feel.
No, that's a good landing spot. I'm saying like a bad one where like he could have lost value.
Yeah, I mean, I think
anywhere where there wasn't a clear path to a lot of touches. I mean, there's places where he could have landed.
Honestly, Philly, I would have felt fine about where I had Josh Jacobs ranked. Like, you're not getting goal line carries, and they're not throwing to you very often.
I think the market would have reacted pretty similarly to Jacobs.
I think you're right, because we've seen what happened with Barkley, but that's one where I would have been like annoyed with having to chase this more, as opposed to like, God damn, I didn't think this was a thing. I didn't think this was possible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Gretch. Are you going to be in on him with, let's even just say conservative, a mid third round ADP?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't drafted yet. You guys are,
Yeah.
Pete, you were talking about this like a month ago when you hadn't started drafting yet and everyone was starting in January. You guys are like 2 months into drafting, and I'm like, I haven't done a single fucking draft. Like,
I'm talking about a hypothetical.
Like, Pat's like, here's where I had the ranks, and here's where they've moved 3 times in the last 2 months. I'm like, fuck off, dude.
Don't call me a fantasy nerd, dude. Hey, no, ship chasing.
Gretch, to be fair, I'm talking about a hypothetical draft landscape that not even I am drafting in because it doesn't exist yet. I'm saying if and when Josh Jacobs ends up in the third.
Yeah, no, I think he's probably a 3rd round pick. I mean, I like the landing spot. Jordan Love's the type of quarterback I like for receiving for the backs, and the fact that Jones left immediately. I mean, you get a really good sense that Jacobs going to play a lot of snaps. I think that's what the Packers were targeting when they acquired him, was a guy who has shown an ability to carry a huge load. Like he and then I mean, I talked about this on Stealing Bananas a little bit, but in 2021 2022 he has a really good year. Prior to that, he was never particularly efficient, and then last year's efficiency went away again. But at least he's shown that. Like I was kind of weirdly saying this to Sean. I didn't really know how to articulate it, but like he didn't like the franchise tag last year. Ends up signing it late in the year. They have a terrible year. They fire their coach. There's a lot of like contextual reasons why maybe he just wasn't trying very hard last year, if you want to like put it in a really blunt way. I'm not thrilled that
was true though. I mean, he was like a real locker room guy. The coaches loved him there. I think he was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if trying is the right way to put it. I think a lot of this stuff comes down to like, did you do those extra reps in the weight room all off season? Like, how hard did you really try to get yourself that extra percent physically to your absolute peak? I think he did that the year prior when he was on the last year of his deal. And then maybe this past year when he was like he got franchise tagged and wasn't getting a long-term deal. It was like less of an exciting offseason for him. I don't know. It's just kind of a weird way of interpreting that. But, in terms of guys who like have those really good years on their contract years and stuff, sometimes it's like, well, maybe they just were like really getting themselves in like the best shapes of their life. Like the best shape of their life concept is like a real concept, even though we joke about how everyone says it all the time. But it's possible that guys are like in better shape sometimes, and then they're banged up other years and they're not playing to 100% of their capabilities. And there's different like layers like that. At least Jacobs has shown us in 2022 efficiency and a strong season, and otherwise has shown us the ability to carry a lot of touches. I think it's like every year of his career, he's had at least 240 touches or something like that. And it's like 6 years now or whatever, 5 years. Like
consolidator. He
right.
That's his superpower.
And this is a good offense for that. It's a perfect offense for that. They're going to score points. They got a young quarterback, so they're probably going to run in the red zone a decent amount. He's a drop back passer who's going to check down a decent amount. All that stuff is like very favorable. 260 plus touches every year of his career. I mean, that's a lot of touches.
I think I'm more concerned about the rushing efficiency last year because, like, and anytime I see, veteran running back changes teams coming off inefficient rushing season, I'm like, that, generally doesn't turn out very well. I do think that, like, the commitment aspect of this is tough for me to, like, just fully overlook, though. Like, they're going to, like, ride out an inefficient Josh Jacobs season, I think, unless they have something better. And that's why the A.J. Dillon thing is really helpful, because A.J. Dillon is not better. And then, do they draft someone, or is it Emmanuel Wilson? They seem to like Emmanuel Wilson. So I think they're going to like see it out. It could be kind of like Leonard Fournette a couple years ago, where it's like, even if he's bad, he still just gets touches. And obviously you're hoping that he's the guy he was 2 years ago, and the offensive upgrade could help unlock a little bit of that and efficiency. And his receiving efficiency, I don't think, was too bad last year. So maybe he's not totally washed and he just had a bad year for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, it's the type of bet where if he moves into the second round, I'm just not going to do it. But if it's in the third round and I've gone wide receiver, okay.
Yeah, which is literally where we were at last year with him. It's like,
yep, exactly.
Third round, we go, yeah.
But so he had 393 touches in that 2022 year that he was so impressive. We know about like the whole curse of 370 stuff from like a decade ago. That was like a whole thing. I mean, maybe part of the inefficiency last year was just he came off a really heavy year the year prior. He only played 13 games last year, but still had 270 touches, like still showed an ability to take a lot of work, but is now 2 years removed from the massive workload. That's another thing that maybe leads to
1.24 yards per hour last year was actually a career high. So that's nice, especially with the rushing efficiency being pretty poor.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to make my pick at the turn. It seems like maybe Gretsch is going to be excited to have the Barkley fall to him, but I'm going King Henry to Baltimore. He was getting drafted after Jacobs. I think he lands in the third round as well. Gus Edwards vacates 13 touchdowns last year in that offense. Who knows what's going on with Dobbins? Keaton Mitchell recovering from injury. He was good last year, fourth in broken tackles. I don't know. I think this is going to be a pretty big move as far as what it means for the fantasy running back landscape.
Yeah, he was good last year. He wasn't super efficient, doesn't have the big playability necessarily anymore, but a lot of the advanced metrics were really good. Evasion rate, all that stuff, forced missed tackles, blah, blah, blah. I don't look at that stuff a ton, but I know that he looked good in it. He's a 30-year-old back, but he's certainly one that is not clearly washed, which one of the big things that from this and talking to Sean this week and Stealing Bananas and some of the things that has just been kind of a key thing that's been crystallizing for me or bouncing around my head this week is this idea of we talk about age, but we've also talked about this in Dynasty for a long time about age curves. Every player has their own age curves. There's different peaks and stuff. Juju's washed and he's still 25. That dude's peak when we look back on it is his age 21 and 22 seasons. Age 23, Juju was over the hill. That's what happened for that guy. Derrick Henry is a different animal. I don't think he's definitely washed. None of the advanced metrics say he was. He had a tough O-line last year, bad offense. He's going to a really good one where Lamar Jackson's going to help his efficiency, particularly between the tackles. Imagine a run game where you have the ability to do read options with Derrick Henry going straight up the middle, and you have to commit to that, or Lamar pulls and can take it to the edge if you don't, keep guys on the edge and respect that. It's Gus Edwards and Lamar, but instead of Gus Edwards, it's Derrick Henry now running between the tackles. It's that much better. That's going to be a dynamic run game if they use it. Obviously, different coordinator than you almost wish Greg Roman was still there with Derrick Henry.
Yeah, you don't.
He's outside of the J.K. Dobbins thing, which is it's just disgusting how that has run out for him in Baltimore. Yeah. But Henry is the in-boss of what they've been trying to do to patch it together. Where it's we'll bring in Melvin Gordon, we'll bring in Latavius Murray, give us some bruiser back that has a little bit of juice. And it's they finally got the upgraded Gus Edwards. And I think that's pretty exciting for fantasy.
I do too. I'm definitely going to struggle if he ends up in the third. He's not going to catch any passes. Obviously, he can get there on touchdowns. I don't think he's washed, but it's I don't know. I struggle with that kind of archetype of back, the Kenneth Walker kind of vibe. The third, that seems a little pricey to me.
Yeah, because the thesis is touchdowns.
The thesis is touchdowns.
Yeah,
and I'm generally in on the thesis. He can score a lot of touchdowns, and I agree he's not washed. And also,
that's been the issue with Henry his whole career. When he was a first round pick, at least we don't have to pay first round prices, right?
Right.
Yeah,
that's true.
It's been the same profile his whole career.
It is just tough too because it's really hard to feel okay at wide receiver. So I'm trying to be picky about my running backs and But in the fourth I can get on board.
My take now, just from drafting, and many people watching and Pat have drafted way more than me, but because I like the prices on so many of these rookie wide receivers right now pre-draft, I've been not minding taking more detours than usual in rounds 4 through 7, knowing I like a lot of those rookies. When it gets hyper efficient post NFL draft, again, in those landing spots, I think it's going to tighten up in a way that we felt last year in drafts where you start to feel the avalanche stuff. And then it's going to make these clicks a lot harder, where we did Jacobs in the 4th on Badge Bro stream. And we were fine. Like we were loading up on wide receivers. Like I didn't feel shut out. But I'm telling you, after the NFL draft, when these guys and Xavier Worthy, he's going in the 6th round because he's on the Chiefs, it's gonna be like, holy shit, we got to get our wide receivers.
Yeah, I still feel that way now, but you're right. I mean, Worthy and A.D. Mitchell and probably Keon Coleman and all these dudes who are going to go in the, between like pick 25 and 45 or whatever are all going to move up. Yeah, Lad. Yeah, you're right. So that is a good way to play it. And I probably do need to get a little more exposure to these running backs I like but don't love.
All right, Gretch, you're back. Middle of the 2nd round. You got the anchor Diontae to Carolina build going.
Yeah. I mean, this is all about scarcity is what I told you guys. There was, and to be honest, when I first said that, there's 3 running backs that I thought were like a clear tier ahead in terms of the value of their moves. I would have taken Saquon. I mean, the way that you guys are interpreting it, I would have taken Jacobs ahead of Saquon. But I think Saquon is like a really impactful move for a variety of reasons. I would have taken him ahead of Henry, I think. But I have Henry like in that same group ahead of all the other moves in terms of impact. I suppose there's like 1 or 2 more that you could put close as well. But anyway, I was thinking these 3. I like the 2 picks that you made is my point. Barkley, though, to me, I think is maybe being a little bit undersold by I don't know, just the general perception of what
if he's undersold, it's me. The general perception is fucking hyped.
Okay.
His ADP has risen a lot.
I was going to say the perception of the Eagles' offense and some of those things, but you're right. There is a lot of hype. We talked about it last week that his price was already lofty. I was surprised to see him rise from that.
He's up to 17.
Yeah, it's lofty. I'll say the tush push thing again. I talked about this a little bit on Stealing Bananas. I'm of the mind that could be that there's a really wide range of outcomes with what happens with Jason Kelce retired. I think Jason Kelce was not only the most important part of it, but potentially like 85% of the success of the tush push. I mean, I think it's the offensive line more than it was Jalen Hurts. Everyone wants to talk about how much Jalen Hurts squats. I don't necessarily think that the quarterback is the one making like a lot of his tush pushes. He's just falling forward. If you actually watch the play, like, I mean, again, I always do this. Like I watch every game and watch every freaking snap, and Jalen Hurts squatting is not the reason that their tush pushes were good. I'll just say that. Like, I want to see a supercut of their tush pushes. Like, every quarterback could fall forward on these. It's something they do on the offensive line. And particularly, it's always on the left edge or the right edge of Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce. I thought I said Travis Kelce. I think Jason Kelce was like the massive key to all of it. And I think whatever he did is not going to be easily replicable by his replacement, because if you watched around the league, every team tried to do that this year, or like a dozen teams tried to do it, and all of them were ineffective. Only the Eagles were as good as the Eagles. That was the whole conversation this year. It's not like there was something that they were doing that other teams didn't know. The defensive linemen that were lining up would have known. They could have told their own offensive linemen. It's just that Kelce could execute it better than anyone else. That's the way that I interpret it. And so I think their tush push has the potential to be a lot less effective because we saw a lot of other teams be ineffective, which I think actually is part of the reason they brought in Saquon Barkley. Like, I think they're already aware of that. And considering, hey, we need to be better on short yardage, we still think that's a huge, important part of our scheme and our offense, but we want to get a better running back as a result. Barkley's never ran behind a good offensive line. He's never ran in a good offense. All of his stats are bad. I understand that. But, like, it's never been good in New York. There's never been a threat of a passing game. It's always been just Barkley's offense or nothing. The Eagles have a good line. They have good receivers, really good receivers. There's a lot more threat with Jalen Hurts' rushing. It's night and day in terms of the impact on him and his efficiency from what his other 10 players in the field will give him, both the line, the mobility of his QB, and his receivers. One of his best years was when they used Daniel Jones as a runner in 2022, 2 years ago, really effectively in Brian Dable's first season. I think he's going to have a good year in Philly. I think he's going to also – the key I was focusing on was the rushing TDs, because I don't think he's going to catch passes. I think that's a big point, because Hurts just isn't going to throw the backs a ton. But I do think he's going to be a lot more efficient and put up some really strong like peripheral numbers and things like that are going to be – we're going to be like, oh, yeah, Saquon Barkley's are really good.
Yeah, I mean, he sounds like a pretty good third-round pick. But
Yeah.
I'm not going to get on board with him.
I'm
as an
fine with
second
that.
rounder.
I'm fine with that take. I think that's right. Yeah.
I'm just not on board.
But
I mean,
he's not going to be a third-round pick.
If you're
anywhere
explaining
close.
away to me how like the Eagles' most successful short yardage play of all time is done because their center retired, which is very plausible. But I think it helps that everybody else is there still, and it's like Barkley has never been consistent. He's an oversized breakaway runner. So like he's not Derrick Henry. If this was Derrick Henry, I'd be like, well, shit, yeah, maybe they're going to change what they do in short yardage. But Barkley's like, I'm not saying he's like bad in short yardage, but Daniel Raz pulled up his touchdown lines today on FanDuel, and they're like even with Tony Pollard and behind Jacobs.
That's what I'm talking about, though. Everyone thinks the tush push is back. That's what I meant about the perception. And like,
all right.
I think I'm not saying he's definitely going to score a bunch of points. I'm not saying it's definitely gone with Kelce. What I was trying to argue was that the market thinks that the tush push is a thing in Philly that's going to be there. And I said there's a wide range of possibilities that includes it being dead. I think it could be good.
I think the market thinks that Barkley's going to score a lot of touchdowns, or otherwise, why the hell is he going 17 overall? Because he's not going to catch.
Well, you just referenced his rushing touchdown prop, which is different than his ADP and much more specific to the point, being a lot lower.
Fair, but then what are we doing as best ball drafters?
I don't know what his ADP is. I can't answer that.
If it's no touchdowns and no receptions, why are we drafting him 17? Yeah. I don't get it.
Why were they drafting him 23 in the first?
Because they thought he was going to go to the Texans, which is why my next pick is Joe Mixon. Because I think Joe Mixon to the Texans is I'm down to take Joe Mixon now, and people are kind of not into it. I think. Let me pull up the ADP.
That's the name.
He's up 9 picks.
That's the name when I go. I think there's a tier 3, or actually maybe there's 1 or 2 more. Like I saw Mixon's name on my list, and I was like, yeah, Mixon's probably in this group too. So I
am way ahead of ADP on Mixon now. I mean, like he belongs.
Where do you have him?
He comes out in our ranks at 71, but if he moves up in ADP, he will go a little higher. I'd be comfortable taking him in the early 6th round.
He absolutely is going to go ahead of 71.
Well, he's at 80 right now, and he hasn't had one of the mega rises that we've seen from some of these other guys. We've already seen Jacobs move up 18 picks.
Alvin Kamara is going 67. Like, what the fuck are drafters doing? This is terrible. Like, I'm not even like
63.
I'm not dogging Kamara, but Mixon should be ahead of Kamara.
Like, I agree. I think Kamara comes out 1 spot ahead in our ranks, but that's because of ADP.
He should be ahead of even Aaron Jones, who's going 64. I mean, like Mixon's just, especially with this deal you just told us, like he's going to get all the work in Houston, and you have a drop back passer, efficient passing game, plenty of touchdown opportunities, and a drop back passer means pass attempts to the running back as well. Like he's going to get all the high value touches. I don't even think Mixon's good, but this is.
I don't either. I don't either, but it's a great situation. And I can draft this dude in the 6th round. Like, sign me up.
Because
go ahead.
The most likely scenario, right, is Mixon gives us what Devin Singletary did, right? Which was like he was giving us like mid-range RB2 numbers, like down the entire back stretch.
Yeah, which I would love to not pay a premium for, and I'm worried that's what I get out of like.
He's going in the 4th round in a month. Mixon. There's no way he stays at 80. I will.
Well, he's definitely not staying at 80.
I mean, he's going in the 4th round. At least. I think he's going to wind up in the 3rd round. Why wouldn't he? What has happened? Like,
well, I'm out on the 3rd round. I mean, he went in the 4th round last year in Cincinnati.
Relative to Barkley going 16 overall, like that's going in the 4th.
I would have taken Mixon over Barkley. The Barkley one to me is.
But you're doing it all based on ADP. This is my point. I'm not drafting. I had no idea Mixon was going 80. Like we're in a completely different world. Like get out of your fucking Daniel Raz conversations. This is also the only people you talk to are drafting as much as you. I have not drafted yet this year.
I'm pretty sure people watching are drafting. I believe I'm amongst friends here. The other thing with Barkley is it feels very clear to me that in almost every
little elitist.
I'm a man of the people. God damn it. I'm pretty sure that Barkley was going to rise in ADP almost wherever he went. Like this was like a please don't go to Carolina type of situation where like if he were to go to Dallas, if he were to go to Houston, he would have risen. And I'm more on board there. But like the Philly one to me is like, God damn, he was going to jump up no matter where he went.
This is the sad thing. Like, God damn it. I have to drive to Oregon tonight to go drive Joe Mixon. Can we draft at the end of the stream?
Though? Gretchen, apologies for referencing ADP, but I'm referencing last year's ADP. All of these guys are just yo-yoing back to where they went last year in drafts. Like almost every single one of them is just going where they did last year.
There's no thought to like a lot of these. The Barkley thing, there's no thought to it. It's I don't know. We were just talking about that, but I don't know.
All right, Pat, you're on the turn. Kick us off the third round.
All right, I'm gonna go. Man, this is. I think there's a pretty big tier break here.
Okay, I have two that I'm really hoping at least one comes back to me.
Interesting.
By the way, as I stall for time, we didn't talk about the Jacobs opening up Zamir White as a potential pick, which is another reason why he's a really strong pick at 3 Pete.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna go. Zack Moss signs with the Bengals.
God damn, that was my sleeper pick.
Everybody's getting steamed up, boards.
Zack Moss has risen 37 picks in ADP. Sorry, Ben, since signing with the Bengals, up to pick 127 from 164.
I mean, we might as well just draft it based on who's moved the further. Is this ADP basing? Like, why don't we just make a list of biggest risers and fallers and then just rank our draft that way?
Notice this is my third pick, Ben, and yet this is the highest riser that we've selected so far.
Gretch is tilting that we're doing this test open book, and he's having to do it closed book.
Right, exactly. I'm trying to see during the draft.
Yeah.
I showed up to the test naked, guys. What the hell?
I just thought of another one that is pretty good. There's actually another one. Anyway, this is still my pick.
Take the other one. I'll take Moss. I don't even know what to take.
This is still my pick, but I do think there's another strong one out there. The other thing about this, it's going to have a big impact on the fantasy landscape because we're going to be arguing all summer, all offseason, Moss versus Chase Brown, and there's going to be the camps, and we're going to be, the fight from Anchorman. Someone's getting stabbed with a harpoon. I'm taking both of these guys. I'm taking both these dudes.
I feel like when that kind of stuff happens, they play almost different positions, right? Isn't it like the Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery thing? Like what Zack Moss is going to do for this team is so different from what Chase Brown is going to do for this team.
You sweet summer child.
It's not going to be like an if or like it's not, Kenneth Walker versus Zach Charbonnet, and you're hoping like one of them wins out the lead, gets the lead job kind of thing.
Yeah, but they're going to have their touts behind them. There's going to be people that are strongly Moss and strongly Chase Brown. I think we take both. We load up. We play this like the Bills with Devin Singletary and Zack Moss, and there's a winner, and we have that winner.
Yeah.
The question is, was
Zack Moss good at the end of last year? Because I did not think he was.
The reason I wanted to pick this is Moss is the third running back in terms of impact that I care about in terms of why I would pick Moss to Cincinnati. The first two are Jonathan Taylor back to a full workhorse role. Well, he's sort of second because the other one is Chase Brown, who didn't get Mixon staying or like a Saquon dropped on his lap or something like that. Instead, he got Zack Moss, who, to Pete's point, wasn't that great last year. His efficiency was solid. Again, I'm going to go to, did you watch the games? And I know it's annoying, but he had a couple long runs that were just like horribly defended, well blocked, whatever. Like he didn't look explosive. He's not, and Chase Brown did at all times. He didn't have a ton of touches. He's a day 3 back. They might get a third back in here. They might draft another back for all we know. But he looked very explosive. He timed explosive as one of the fastest next-gen times last year. I think this is one of those clear ones where you're like not very efficient, older, low-value touchback versus younger, explosive, high-value touchback. I always want to be on that second profile. I don't think you're wrong, Pat, that you want to get some of both. Like I do think you still want to get Moss in this offense. but I really
Sounds
want to.
Like you're going to be in the Brown camp by the end of the summer, buddy.
I'm going to be in the Brown camp for sure. I'm going to start in the Brown camp for sure. Is Moss more expensive though? He is, right?
No, not right now. His ADP was
Browns.
like 145 or
Yeah,
something.
you got to take Moss in the triple digits of ADP for sure.
Yeah.
No, he's gonna go just ahead of the top 100. I think both are like pick 95ish range.
Yeah.
And so they both go, and then we'll yell at each other.
I think people think Chase Brown took a lot more. He only had or did a lot more last year. He only had 50 touches. A lot of other guys, like they were using some other backs in there as well. I mean, I was talking to Sean about this, but like Tyjae Spears is a good example of like a secondary back that had a good role and was good all year. Usually that role has like 150 touches, which is what Tyjae Spears had last year. Chase Brown had 50. He didn't even get to 100. He was very lightly used, actually, was very good in that usage. But I think people are like also overstating him a little. That's why I said I'm kind of concerned about a third back maybe being involved.
Yeah, that's the thing. If they draft somebody, that could be kind of crazy. It's also, yeah, good.
No, I was just going to say that's a good point too, is I think there's probably going to be a false sense of feeling like these backfields are settled because these are big free agency moves. People don't love the draft class, but like all it takes is one semi-intriguing rookie to eat into any of these backfields and make it a three-way committee or something like that, which could wipe out a lot of this stuff and make a lot of these less attractive. Because I think people will just think through it the lens of who's Zamir White going to compete with, blah, blah, blah. But you add another back into Cincinnati, Jalen Wright, or so whoever it is, like that can complicate the shit out of it quickly.
For sure.
This is a good point in the chat from Ferris that Chase Brown had a hamstring injury, went to IR. I get that, but I was just basically saying like how us reading how committed they are to him as a player. It's hard to make a huge read because he's a day 3 back and they didn't use him a ton. Like we didn't get like a ton of evidence that they're like super in on him, Yeah. But I mean, it's fair to say like he was hurt and that's part of why they didn't really play him a ton. They do seem to like him. And again, he looked awesome. I think I'm going to be pretty into this dude, but I think
Take Moss too, man. Take some Moss.
Yeah.
If you don't know, this is a classic old school zero running back, ambiguous backfield. We load up. We don't, I mean, you can kind of, there's arguments either way. I think, didn't JJ Zacharyson show that we were actually pretty good at predicting this, and some of the Rotoviz work showed that we aren't? So I don't even know if there's agreement on whether we can predict these backfields well. So my general feeling is that if I like both of these guys, and I do, then, and I think they do different things well, to your point, B, like, Moss is going to be more the banger. I saw some stuff that he was good out of the shotgun. They obviously use a lot of shotgun there. But man, Brown looked really explosive, really athletic. Moss was super disappointing before last year, so he could just like turn back into a pumpkin. So I don't know how this is going to go, but I think this seems like fertile ground for a win as long as we take both.
For sure. There's definitely going to be a winner. It seems like there has to be a winner.
And the one nice thing about Zack Moss that we saw from last year is the Colts were willing to use him as a bell cow back. They were throwing catches to him, and at least the Zack Moss I used to remember on the Bills and stuff, like he was a plotter, goal line guy, was never going to get that kind of work. And then you saw what the Colts did at the beginning. They're like, holy cow, the entire offense is built out of this guy, which that kind of putting that on tape had to give the Bengals some confidence in like, hey, could he be a little bit of a Mixon light for us and kind of replace what we just had? So that makes him intriguing, just knowing he's probably not going to be pigeonholed into just a 2-down rusher.
There's no way both these guys should be just inside 100, though, to your point, Pat. For a really good offense, you're going to have a winner at that point. Also, someone in the chat's mentioned, I just want to give a shout out to JJ did a recent newsletter on why you should be skeptical of Chase Brown. Cody mentioned a second ago that I must not subscribe to it. I actually read that, and I thought it was great. I had written something similar for an intro to one of my TPRR posts that I ended up not using. That is where I'm pulling some of the like 50 touches and stuff that I just mentioned. Like I feel like I actually kind of made some of the case that JJ did, but his model, his year 2 model, he wrote a little bit about, has Chase Brown in a range where not a lot of running backs going into year 2 have been great. Which he talks about, like there's ways that could be wrong. Obviously, we all know that there's ambiguity in this stuff, but the fact of the matter is, again, day 3 back that didn't play a ton as a rookie. And that's in his model empirically has shown that like those types of backs tend to not go on to be huge producers in year 2. will be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But there's going to be a winner. Like, I agree with that too. Like, the costs are low.
Yeah.
Anyway,
all right.
I will go. Yeah, I will go. Pollard to Tennessee will be my pick here. Probably the most impactful thing is how it opens up Dallas. Like, I mean, I mean, that's a pretty huge thing. Like, I mean, I can't believe you guys let this last third round. I just made the best.
No, it's true. I should have taken Pollard.
Nice value. Nice value.
I had to give you that value. I had to give you a little value to make up for your.
I had to give you a little bit. But, I mean, the other huge impact is that Tajay Spears was a huge favorite, and people are really excited about him, and he kind of crushes that. I don't know how I'm going to fall on that or how I'm going to want to play that. It's not great by any means, right? Like, it's definitely something that Pollard wasn't efficient last year. We all know that very, very well. Tajay Spears was, but also they just paid Pollard, and they're, maybe more likely to use him a little bit more. Super minor thing, but he played at Memphis, right? So he's going back to Tennessee. There's like a little bit of a local thing there, kind of similar to the Barkley going back to Pennsylvania thing. You get some of the I don't think that is going to impact usage a ton, but maybe a little bit of the sentiment around the team and stuff. The local writers, the beat reporters are maybe a little bit more favorable to these guys when they're going back to their hometown teams and stuff, which I've picked up that more from Barkley going back to Philly. Have you guys heard some of that stuff where it's like the Penn State guys are stoked to have Barkley back in Philly? But anyway, I think Pollard's going to certainly have the first crack to be like the lead, but I would bet on Spears being the more talented in the conversation, sort of similar to what I was just saying with the Bengals, with Moss and Brown, that like it feels like the guy that will start as the number 2 is the better bet to be good and efficient and explosive and put up huge weeks. But I think it's closer than the Cincinnati situation, and that I still like Pollard. So I don't even know how I'm going to wind up playing that. I also don't know their ADPs at all. Wouldn't be able to tell you in the first place. So he flipped Spears,
but he's going in the range that like Jacobs and Henry were going before all this.
So yeah, Spears.
But they're both going higher than both Cincinnati guys, which is just on its face 100% wrong. Like, they have Will Levis, they have a bad offense. What are you doing? Draft.
Yeah, so Spears is down from 68 to 86, so he's dropped 18 picks. And then Pollard has basically been the same in ADP. He's at 79.
People aren't really
at 79.
Which it kind of makes sense. Like, where you had him, like, this was probably like a neutral spot for him to land as far as best case scenarios.
It's probably a bad spot, really, because the offense isn't going to be that good. And Spears is good.
Right. I don't think it's good for either of them. Though where I was going with all my words, conclusion is like, I don't really want to be in on either of them. Whereas with the Moss and Chase Brown thing, I kind of want to be in on both of them. I do have a favorite there, but I would rather even though I just got done saying I'm Chase Brown over Moss, I would rather take Moss than I think either of the Tennessee guys. I mean, maybe not straight up, but it's not like far off. And I think the fact that there's this big of a gap in price right now is a mistake.
What people I can tell from the Pollard fans that they're going to talk themselves into last year being an injury-riddled aberration to his career, and that he's going to be fully healthy and be the lead back. That I don't buy it myself, but that's what is going to keep him here, if not push him up even more.
So yeah, no, I agree. Although I don't know if he'll get pushed up that much.
I can't even walk around a corner in a Discord without someone mentioning Tajay Spears' knee ligaments or lack thereof. This. We're already.
But this is so funny to me because Spears was going like really high. He was going pick 68, and I was the one mentioning the knee ligaments.
About the medicals.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, now that Pollard's there, it matters is the condition of his knee. Like, what?
Yeah.
What does that have to do with it?
Yeah, it should be better for him because like you kind of didn't want him to be. Yeah, I don't think the best thing for Spears is to try to be a 300 touch back. It's probably to be a secondary explosion back, right?
I thought
like what Aaron Jones was
for Spears. I thought it was like a near best case.
It wasn't bad, yeah. Now that we're talking about it.
I put Spears down at 117. It's kind of like a handcuffy type of plus, like standalone value plus a lot of contingent value type of pick.
That feels like where he should land, yeah. I was just gonna say that, like, the comp for a career, like we were talking all through Aaron Jones's career, like free Aaron Jones is like a big meme. But like that type of role where he was always this like space back, explosive play back, receiving back, but didn't like ever get enough touches to satiate people who really wanted him to be like an every down back. Like that's actually not a bad spot in terms of like there's less wear and tear. You're giving up low value touches. Like that feels like the right situation for Spears, right?
I agree.
Yeah. All right. I'm at the turn here, third round. For the audio listeners, Kirk to Atlanta, Diontae to Carolina, Jacobs to Green Bay, Henry to Baltimore, Barkley to Philly, Mixon to Houston, Moss to Cincinnati, Pollard to Tennessee. I'm going to keep this running back train going.
Why don't you guys take a receiver? Jesus. You guys just gobbling up running backs.
Like the NFL.
I am going Gus Edwards to the Chargers. And my thought here is the whole narrative right now is how much Harbaugh wants to run the ball, that there's going to be this huge identity shift. He already knows from his brother what he's getting in Gus. Everyone's trying to, connect the dots of Roman, and they're trying to connect the dots of Blake Corum to the Chargers, and if maybe they spend a second round pick. But then I listen to everyone say how much Blake Corum sucks. And you know what you're going to get from Gus Edwards. He's a virtual lock to be their goal line back. And if this rookie that they draft falters or whatever, like he could have a much bigger role in an improved offense that has a good quarterback, still has Keenan Allen. They're going to move the ball. They're going to have red zone trips. This isn't me rushing to the podium to take Gus in the top 100 picks, but I think his ADP is very much going to be on the rise, and kind of similar to Zack Moss. He feels a little sneaky to me in the access you're getting to a rebound offense.
It's a good case. I've been a little bit I've had a hard time getting excited about Gus because I don't think he's very good. The efficiency, normally I really like the rushing efficiency stuff, but he's playing next to Lamar. And so it's just like very tough for me to get, that we're just going to take this rushing efficiency that the guy produced next to Lamar Jackson when he's not a breakaway guy. He's like a consistent, steady chunk play guy. Well, that's a lot easier if you're next to Lamar Jackson, doesn't catch any passes. And so I'm like, man, is that actually going to translate? But you're still going to be able to get him, he's going around pick 150 right now. And as like an arbitrage on some of these other, like I need Derrick Henry's touchdowns, and you got to draft him in the third round. If I can get Gus Edwards at pick 140 or something, and buy my touchdowns that way, I do like that.
And what if they don't spend a second round pick? I mean, they could have very little draft. I mean, the Chargers have a lot of needs. They're in cap space hell. Yep. They could really use a wide receiver with that second round pick. I'll tell you that much. Like, they would be much better off taking a wide receiver there.
And the fit with Greg Roman, I think they're going to give Gus more work than he probably deserves at this stage for the reasons that Pat just said from his actual success over the last couple of years. I think this is an interesting pick. Pete, you said there was two you were hoping would come back to you. Was this one of them? I was curious.
It actually wasn't. Okay. My other pick is still on the board, who I'm going to take here. And okay. I realize we're getting thinner here, but I still think Russ to Pittsburgh is a pretty big move. I think anyone who's not Kenny Pickett is big. I know Russ Wilson isn't exciting, but I think he can do the things that they want him to do. I think he can make those throws down the field to Pickens in the play action. I think he can turn the ball over less than Kenny Pickett. And I think he can run a competent offense that is going to not give a meteoric rise to all the pieces in the offense, but essentially raise all of their floors, including the running game. I just feel like there's going to be more week-to-week consistency. That's what he did in Denver. He showed no fantasy ceiling whatsoever, but his floor was sneaky good down the stretch. He was just locking you in for 18 or 19 points. Kenny Pickett had no floor whatsoever. And so I actually feel slightly better about all the pieces in this offense with Russ there.
I agree about, I definitely agree with that.
Well, you hated Kenny Pickett more than anyone I've ever met, Pat.
Well, sorry for being right, dude.
No, that's fair. You get a victory lap that he sucks. He's bad.
Thank you. The Michael Scott thank you meme. Truly.
He's not good.
So, Gretch, I know you're not as high on Russ in general.
Yeah. I mean, he struggled in the intermediate range last year. I felt like Sean Payton was just sort of hiding him. His per attempt efficiency was like vaguely okay, but like they ran everything through the running backs. A lot of short passes. I just did their targets per route run right up earlier today because it's a part of the last one that I haven't sent out yet. But their top 2 guys in targets per route run among their 100 routes guys were their 2 running backs by a lot. Javonte Williams was over 30%. Samaje Perine was 24%, and none of their other players were over 20%. So it's like the whole offense was just based around like dumping off to the running backs, which is going to help your efficiency as a passer, but is also like, we don't trust you. And they didn't really try to win games by attacking. They did throw, I mean, he still throws a good deep ball. He's always had that. But the other reason his per attempt efficiency was decent is he takes a lot of sacks. He runs into a lot of sacks. And I think he can be good for Pickens. I think like he will chuck some stuff up, and Pickens has been pretty efficient as a downfield guy. I think it's a pretty good match for what Pickens needs.
They also used Pickens more over the middle last year. With Diontae gone, that could open up some of those types of routes. I think he might be better.
Does Russ throw those?
Well, no, that's true. He doesn't.
I think there's
and then you have Arthur Smith as well. So I hate Arthur Smith as the last thing I want to
Well, that's what I was just going to say. We're going to find out what is the lesser of 2 evils. Your head coach despising you more than any other person on the planet, or Arthur Smith being your offensive coordinator.
Right.
Like, which one of those is worse? I do wonder if we're going to like really get narrative street driven. Like Russ has to feel like a weight lifted off his shoulder of no, like you read or saw some of the interviews with him and how that contract situation was held and how he basically felt like he was being held hostage with that stuff. Like
they ended up benching him.
Yeah.
They ended up benching him when and he was basically like, well, his numbers are good enough that he shouldn't get benched, and they were going to file a grievance with the NFLPA. And I mean, to your point, like it was very bad. It wasn't healthy relationship there.
Yeah, he's going to feel like he has a new lease on life. We're also in round 4. We're starting to.
We might need to do a 5th round of this. There's a lot.
We know because I need to keep my steady bedtime.
All right.
Yeah. There are a lot of good ones.
There's a lot left. I mean,
no, there's a lot. I mean, I could name 20. The game isn't like on the Swolecast where Kitchen told us to close our eyes and name running backs who changed teams. We're trying to draft impactful ones.
Yeah,
there's a lot of impactful ones left. That's what I'm saying.
I agree with Pat. I was looking forward to taking Zach Ertz in the 8th round.
We can do some speed rounds. Well, we got to make our case quicker. We could do a.
That's a good call. I'll do. Well, so I think probably DeAndre Swift has to go at some point, but I'm not going to take him because it's just like a negative impact. The stuff that's a negative impact, Eckler's kind of a negative impact. It's not that fun. I'm going to go. I'm going to put another name on my list that I'm like not even that excited to draft, but I'm going to take Gabe Davis to Jacksonville.
Oh my God.
And it's not for Gabe Davis. It's not for Gabe Davis.
There's still a bunch of things, but this is not one of the ones I was thinking of.
It's not for Gabe Davis. It's for Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. I think this is a really big move for both Kirk and Ingram. This is the chat saying you guys don't love it. I'm not saying this is about Gabe Davis. I don't even want his name here. I just want Kirk and Ingram's name on my.
Why don't you pick Ridley to Tennessee then?
Because I don't think Ridley to Tennessee is very on its face. But yeah, Ridley being gone does help Kirk and Ingram too. But Ridley, I don't know that Ridley's even that good, and he's going to play with Will Levis. I don't think. Yeah. So anyway, I think this is a better fit for their offense. It's more of a vertical pass. The way that a pass weapon, the way I described it, was that it's not really replacing Ridley as much as it feels like it's replacing the Marvin Jones, Zay Jones vertical element from 2022, which was the best version of this Jacksonville offense with Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson. They were really good down the stretch that year. Worse last year when they had like this alpha, but more of a fake alpha in Calvin Ridley that they were sort of trying to get targets to, and his skill set in the short and intermediate range a little bit more overlapping with Kirk and Ingram. Gabe Davis doesn't earn a lot of volume, but he is good per target. So he threatens defenses They are going to respect his deep threat. I do think it's a good landing spot for Gabe in so far as what his actual, landing spot situation could have been, because Lawrence will push it downfield, and when they are hitting stuff underneath and teams forget about Gabe downfield, I think he'll have some splash moments like he's had. But more importantly, I think he's going to open up the Kirk and Ingram underneath, and the receiving weapons, even though Gabe's not better than Ridley, even though I just said I'm not very high on Ridley, the receiving weapons are now a lot more complementary. I think it's a positive for Trevor Lawrence as well. I'm pretty high on Jacksonville rebounding as like a post-hype after they were a pretty big disappointment in 2023, in part because of this. Like, I think it's a really good element for their, like, what he does fits for what they needed. It was a smart free agent signing. Relatively cheap too. Like real football stats. He's gonna
help open it up.
Yeah, he's gonna help open it up.
I like that.
Do we know what's up with Zay yet?
I think they were going to cut him because they thought they were going to get Ridley back, and now they probably don't cut him.
Yeah. I think the Gabe stuff's definitely more interesting without Ridley.
Yeah,
for sure.
For sure.
All right, Pat.
I will take Aaron Jones to Minnesota.
Oh wow, dude. I kind of forgot that one.
Honestly, the thought of that one not even getting drafted was one of the reasons I was like, we need a 5th round.
Way worse than the Gabe pick. Way worse.
Why? First of all, this nuked Chandler, who was going really high, like he was starting to creep up, towards 100. Now you can get him. I took him today around I think around 150, which I'm like, damn. I mean, this guy's a clear RB2, and he's showed a little talent. Like I like that, but I think Aaron Jones still has left in the tank. I know they don't have Kirk Cousins anymore, but they'll probably get JJ McCarthy, and then maybe it's not a total disaster. And
I think they're basically just resetting their books this year. They're like plus 800 to win the division now. They're behind the Bears by a good chunk. Like, they're gonna suck this year. They're gonna be really bad now. They got rid of Danielle Hunter. Their defense is gonna be even worse.
They're gonna go get McCarthy, don't you think?
I don't know for sure, but yeah, that's probably what they want to do. But is McCarthy going to be a good rookie quarterback, or is he going to be okay, or you don't really want a rookie quarterback in a situation where they're resetting their cap.
No, I mean, yeah, it's that's why we lasted the 5th round. But I think it has two effects. It hurts Chandler's ADP, who now I think does become somewhat of a value because, hey, he's an RB2. It's not a great situation, but we just talked about how we like Tajay Spears on a shitty Tennessee offense, So, but it'll make that backfield a little more interesting. Because again, I mean, Jones I think still has something left. So if you're going to give me Jones, depending on how far he falls, which he hasn't fallen that far so far, he's only fallen 1 pick, which is insane. Like he should fall like 20 picks. But I'm interested to see if we get any kind of.
He's still good, and Justin Jefferson's still good. They're not going to be like a horrible offense. Any quarterback can play with Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones as weapons.
I guess the thing, it's interesting. It goes back to our argument about what the spirit of this exercise is, because from a fantasy standpoint, he's going to go in the exact same spot as he was, right?
I lowered him to 76, and I think had him in the 60s, in the high 60s, the good 60s. So I don't know. I thought it was pretty impactful for him. He moves from the Green Bay offense to the Minnesota offense. That should have come with a pretty substantial discount, which hasn't materialized yet. But then we are seeing the discount for Ty Chandler. So I think it's shifted. I'll defend that things have shifted in the way, even if the market hasn't shifted a ton.
You're defending it that he should be slipping further, but you're running to the podium to take it. You're saying that the negative. I'm confused.
I'm saying we are seeing a negative shift on Chandler's ADP, which now makes him interesting, and we're taking Jones, who I thought was a target, and making him a pretty clear fade. So it's completely shifted my thinking on Jones, and it's also shifted my thinking on Chandler, who I thought was a little shaky. I was mixing him in, but now I'm like, I kind of like scooping up some Chandler at a much reduced cost.
This show premise is starting to bust at the seams.
I did that with the second pick.
All right, let me get back on track
Get
here.
back. Yeah, get back on track.
Jerry Jeudy's trade to the Browns because now we're back in on Marvin Mims.
Okay.
Okay. Now we're cooking. Yeah, this one, you're going way back. This was, Saturday night or Sunday when this went down, which feels like a distant memory.
I know, it feels like a month ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how for Jeudy, is it just like anything's an upgrade from what he was dealing with in Denver?
I moved him up a couple picks because I was like, I'm more likely to take him now. But I think it's like his range of outcomes got wider and the overall strength of the pick didn't change much. But I was like, I'm probably more into it. So I moved him up a couple. But basically, he stays the same. But I think it's huge for Marvin Mims. I also think it's big for Cortland Sutton, who I now see as a pretty big target. Like he's got, let's see, his ADP is at 101. We have him at 91. So I've been a little surprised that people, I mean, it's Sutton and we don't know who the quarterback is. So I get it, but like they will have someone quarterbacking them this year.
Yeah.
I still worry a little bit about what Sean Payton's going to do because they're not going to get a good quarterback. And like even in Peyton's good offenses with Drew Brees, there was usually one good receiver, Jimmy Graham years, Marcus Colston years, but then it was like rotational and the running backs got so many catches. And that was when they were playing in a dome and had Drew Brees at quarterback. They're playing outdoors and have somebody shitty again. Like I was just mentioning how their two running backs had massively the highest targets per out run. Like he designs plays in the passing game to his running backs. Like it's just sort of, but Sutton could be the one guy.
Yeah.
I'm just a little worried.
He's fine. And he's like now a clear number one, and you can get him outside the top 100 picks. That seems pretty good to me.
Are you in on Jeudy in Cleveland?
No, that's what I was saying. Like I'm like kind of the same on Jeudy. I'm a little bit more likely to take him now, but it's more just because I think it's a little more fun. Like who knows? Yeah. Who knows now? You know, whereas before, like I felt like I kind of knew.
Yeah.
You know?
It's tough because Amari and Njoku both had career years last year. I mean, they both were really good.
Right.
So it feels crowded, and Deshaun Watson's been bad. I'm going to go Gardner Minshew to the Raiders. I'm going to continue the premise of not knowing what I'm doing with any of this. Devontae Adams, I just kind of want to talk about this. Devontae Adams was actually really good last year from all the underlying metrics and horrible in yards per target. He was 6.5 yards per target. He hadn't been within a yard of that on like the bad way. He's been at least a yard better every season since back in his second. Remember his first and second years notoriously were horrible. His second year, he was worse. But ever since then, he's been at least a yard better than that every season. He'd been multiple yards better than that in most of his recent seasons, like 2 yards better. And he still earned targets at a really, really high rate, still had a good ADOT. His weighted targets per out run, when you bring in the air yards, were actually stronger than 2022 when he was a smash. He had 1,500 yards and 14 TDs. And part of that's because this team was just horrible. They fired their coach midseason, terrible quarterback play, all that stuff. I think Minshew is a pretty competent quarterback and has moved around and has displayed like a Ryan Fitzpatrickian level of competency for his receivers in the different offenses he's played in, and pretty stoked for him to land in with the Raiders. I think it could also be good for Jacoby Myers, and maybe if Michael Mayer has a year two breakout. I mean, he didn't have a great rookie season, frankly, but he's a lot cheaper than like Laporta and Kincaid and those guys where you already have to pay a ton to get the year two bet. So I think the Raiders passing game gets a little bit more interesting with Minshew.
Yeah. I think that's a good call. Yeah, he slung it last year. I mean, those Colts games too were wild. Yeah, as far as from getting into a shootout standpoint, letting him cook. They've already devalued the running game, going away from Jacobs. So there's less of an identity there.
Right.
Although they do seem to like Zamir a good bit, but still. Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think he gives them a floor because I wouldn't be surprised at all if they were the team that went and got McCarthy.
Sure.
Or if they get Penix or Bo Nix. So I don't know how much we're getting from Minshew, but I think what we get will be pretty good, which is nice. If you're betting on the receivers there, you're like, well, my worst case is still pretty solid.
The main core for me was to mention Adams was still at a 29% targets per route run, and his yards per target was so bad, right? And if Minshew can at least keep his yards per target, the after the target efficiency reasonable, he was still earning volume. He's still young enough. He's still that good of a route runner. Like it doesn't really change because I noticed he's already going like really high. I was hoping we'd get him in like the 4th round, and then I went and looked at ADP on him when I was writing him up, but I was like,
he hasn't really risen. He's risen 1 pick. He's up to 20. So, that it hasn't moved the needle, and maybe it should have a little.
He probably should be going ahead of Marvin Harrison now. We were talking I agree with you last week when you were saying Harrison's like in a fine spot, but writing up Adams, writing up Rashee Rice today, Rashee Rice should be going ahead of Marvin Harrison, period. He was really, really good this year. And you have the Kelce contingency stuff. Like, he overlaps with Kelce in a contingency-based way. He didn't even run 80% of the routes in a game until week 14, and then was really good in the playoffs as well. Like, Rashee Rice should be going ahead of Harrison because the stuff we talked about last week about how it's hard to be much better than like what Rice was as a rookie. Year 2 is where the routes explode and stuff. Harrison might run a ton of routes.
Steph Miller's writing an article for Leg Up on Rashee Rice and why he's such a target.
Smart girl. Very smart woman.
I think he's a guy who, talking about that ambiguity of the second round, my issue with Rice right now is just, I think we're going to for sure get cheaper Rice as the season goes on. Like, they're almost a lock to get some kind of wide receiver in the draft or competition. Like, I just think we're close to the top of what his ADP is. Whereas aside from Travis Kelce waking up and deciding he wants to retire, I don't know what would push Rashi's ADP up any more from where it is right now.
I think it should be higher. So maybe the argument that I'm making, I don't know. He had a 2.39 yards per route run as a rookie, and it's just that he didn't have the routes. Like, I think if you just project more routes, you're like, this is too low.
I agree, but I do think that the market will price in the addition of a receiver because it's like a thing happened and we have to move the guy down, even though they're going to add somebody. That's like a no, like we know that, but I mean, I have Rice at 19, ADP of 23.4. So
yeah,
I'm generally with you. I do have Harrison 1 pick ahead though.
That's because of ADP.
Yeah.
I can't leave this draft without a receiver. Gretsch got his in the 1st. Pat got his
and the 4th.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You got 4. Yeah. Two wide receivers. All right. I'm going Curtis Samuel to the Bills.
Wow.
Love that. I thought you were going to go Ridley.
Yeah. Ridley undrafted.
Yeah.
Love it.
I've been like one of the biggest Ridley bears, and I'm not hopping on the train now that he's like the wide receiver 4 in Tennessee. Curtis Samuel. I mean, haven't the Bills, they've loved this archetype over the years. I mean, how many times have we seen Cole Beasley get absolutely fed? There was the Isaiah McKenzie stuff. I mean, they've kicked the tires on everyone. Crowder's been there, but Samuel's actually good. He's dependable. He continues to earn targets with multiple quarterback situations as well. Earned targets in Carolina. Played very well with Sam Howell last year. I think he's going to be a PPR factor in drafts this year.
Love it.
What are your thoughts on Samuel versus Shakir now? Because I don't think this doesn't change Diggs much, but
I mean, I guess how much is Shakir going to play in the slot, or is Samuel going to own the slot stuff?
I would guess that Samuel owns most of the slot stuff because that's kind of what he does.
I would be Samuel
last year.
A lot in that, for the record. It's not even close. I don't know. The Khalil Shakir stuff is kind of baffling to me. He doesn't earn volume. He had a really high yards per target last year, which was great. But he was under 14% targets per run again. I think people think he's a lot more than he is. He's been efficient. He's like Gabe Davis. Like, he earns as much volume as Gabe Davis, and then he's efficient when he earns a target. Like, that's what he's been.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what it is about Shakir. He just is kind of fun. It's like when he's out there, I'm like,
His name's awesome. It's the same
I'd like to see
last
more
name
of
as
this guy.
Tupac.
yeah.
I would posit that if his last name wasn't the same as Tupac's, that he would not not still be getting drafted as much as he is.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
Tupac
I think they both can succeed. Like if the Bills, I mean, they should, like so many teams, invest in one of these wide receivers coming in. But if they roll into the season with a 3 wide receiver set of Diggs, Samuel, and Shakir, I think those guys can ping pong big games in the same way kind of Gabe Davis used to back in the day, and Shakir popped up for a couple big ones. I think Josh Allen's going to love even Curtis Samuel in the red zone. I feel like he's going to have some sneaky touchdown usage there.
Yeah, he had a better targets per run than anyone in Washington last year. Better than Terry McLaurin, way better than Dotson, who had a really tough year.
He fully, like doing the walkthrough and stuff, like he fully passed Dotson.
Yeah.
So it was like one of those, it's like, damn, dude, he still has a fair amount left. Remember there was that DFS week where we like all played Curtis Samuel and then he got himself ejected?
Yeah. We finally got on board. And then he,
it was so brutal. So don't do that.
Any other, we're not going to do another round, but are there any guys that
we didn't do? I had a list here. So we didn't do Eckler to Washington. We didn't do Swift, DeAndre Swift to Chicago. We didn't do Devin Singletary to the Giants, which still seems pretty impactful.
That's a snub.
I was thinking, honestly, Singletary, I was debating between Samuel and Singletary.
I just didn't want to keep drafting running backs. Like, there's never been a draft where I wanted to take more running backs than I had to. I already took 2. But Singletary was the next one for me, for sure. Darnold to Minnesota maybe is something.
Yeah.
Zach Ertz to Washington. Aligning with Cliff Kingsbury.
We have not mentioned the biggest riser in ADP over the last week.
Oh, God.
And it is a new signing.
Who?
It's Jonnu Smith to the Dolphins.
Oh, my God. I forgot. And that's only because that was one of the very first moves. So it's had the most time.
He's on my list, and I just looked
Yeah.
past him. I think it's like a notable thing, but they consolidate targets so much to Tyreek Hill and Waddle that
I'm just using raw ADP too. He was like going undrafted, and he's up to 193, so it's sort of cheating. But
Pat, I was wondering if you were gonna maybe try to snack Mooney to Atlanta with Kirk to Atlanta there.
I think maybe round 8. The other one, I was thinking if I could try to sneak this past you, but then I was like, I have other good picks. I don't need to get in an argument about it. But Fields still being in Chicago is pretty fucking impactful.
A non-move being one of the most
non-move.
moves.
I love it.
Yeah.
What do you guys?
I'm mad now actually thinking about it because you could have done Fields equals Chicago. You wouldn't have had the change.
You're right.
What do you guys think about Noah Fant now that Will Dissly and Colby Parkinson signed elsewhere and they have a new OC, a whole new coaching staff? Does Noah Fant finally get enough routes?
He's definitely draftable.
The 3 receivers is the hard thing for me, where it's like, he's probably going to set a career high in routes, though, which we've been talking about for years with him. Although he had kind of some bad peripherals in 2023, but for years, his per route stuff was good. He just never was never able to get enough routes in any of these offenses, and he's probably going to finally get that. The other 2 tight ends are gone, new coach. But I think, having the 3 receivers makes it tricky.
It does. Yeah, I was hoping he'd go somewhere else, he'd go to the Bengals. Or didn't Gesicki go to the Bengals?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting one, too.
That is a fun one. It's like what Irv Smith was supposed to be.
Yeah, although I think he might just be Irv Smith.
Come on,
he might be, but
Mike Gesicki's better than Irv Smith.
Right, he is. I think Gesicki to the Bengals is actually better than John.
I think he probably backed up Hunter Henry better than Irv would have. Yeah.
Oh God. Jonnu or Gesicki straight up, Pat?
Jonnu.
No.
Jonnu's better, dude. He's a better player.
No,
you jumped the shark.
Give me the play. Give me the. McDaniel's studying those Arthur Smith plays, baby.
Dude,
we're gonna see him.
Jonnu doesn't have Arthur Smith just like spite funneling him targets anymore.
Spite funneling.
See what Pat just admitted was that Durham Smythe sucks, and at least we got
Durham. Hey, listen, I gave Durham a full year. You suck, Durham. I'm sorry. That's the one guy in the whole industry who was telling you, but no, it's not. It didn't work. It didn't work.
man. I would ask who the winner of this draft was, but I think the real winner was fans of beautiful conditional formatting. I mean,
Now, Pete, this is just formatting.
No conditions.
Conditional
Pat,
formatting is when
it was
auto
conditional on what team they went to.
It's conditional on you clicking the fill
It
box
was
every
literally
single time.
conditional formatting.
You are too anchored to the literal meaning of conditional formatting in the system. This is Pete's proprietary conditional formatting. That is
Lowercase
manually
conditional, not uppercase conditional.
I will say,
And-
truly one of
Yeah.
the highlights of my night was watching Pete change the color on Jacksonville Jaguars.
I was on that for a while.
Since he kept it looking like the Packers, he kept trying to find the right color. I was cracking up while Ben was talking. I was like, I hope Ben doesn't think I'm laughing at what he's saying because I'm fully just watching Pete change the color.
I saw
of
the
Jacksonville.
chat going nuts on him on that one, and
Hey.
several other times. Chat was giving you a hard time.
And I told the chat, I put them in their spot at the beginning of the show
That's
because
right.
I knew what was coming, and they didn't heed my words. I'll tell you that much. Hey, if you guys want me to come to your drafts and through trial and error find the perfect conditional formatting for each cell of your draft, I'm available for hire. All right, let's power
By the
this
way, I
down.
mean, we didn't mention Howell getting traded, and we didn't mention Rondale Moore
Go ahead, dance
getting
on his
traded.
grave.
No,
We
I'm
did
just
Rondale
saying. I mean,
Moore.
there's been a lot of movement.
It's crazy. It's great. Didn't Dortch get an extension too?
Did he?
I'm pretty sure that was in part of
Yeah.
the reason they capitulated. They had to choose one short king, and they brought him in.
How much Dortch is Davis going to draft this year?
Oh
Dude,
my
he
God.
was his most drafted player like this time. I believe that's correct. I don't think that's a bit. I remember him
Yeah.
telling me around this time he was just like loading up on Greg Dortch. So
And,
So maybe he'll be out on him this year. I mean, sometimes it's like,
no, I think he's back in.
okay.
Pat, this year, are you going to flip your Howell bit and be nervous about selecting Geno Smith because he might get benched for Sam
Yes.
Howell?
Yes.
Okay, let's go.
I'm
Let's
consistent.
go.
I mean, I'm not. It wasn't against Hal. I mean, I thought he might get benched when he did.
I missed this. Steph says Davis was in the ship chasing Discord this morning touting.
By the way, I gotta say, I just did a pod with Davis today, and we had one of the funniest, most classic Davis interactions where we were like, dude, every year we get talked in the fun bad quarterback, and the NFL team just like falls in love with this guy, and it's like it's not happening. Like it's okay to draft this guy for fantasy, but you have to understand what you have. And I'm like, I mean, Will Levis, and he goes, well, hang on, Will Levis might be something. He immediately got duped. That was the funnest moment I've had on a podcast. Oh, about a week.
Yeah, Pat, you've been doing a bunch of podcasts. I started listening to your one with JJ. Haven't finished that yet. Gretch, I've been catching up on Stealing Bananas with Sean. Anything else on the radar for you guys?
Well, we have a Dynasty Rankings update that's going to come out. I'm going to try to get it out tomorrow morning. And we'll have a Dynasty article coming out from Steph Miller, her debut article on Legendary Upside. So look for that. We also have a tool that we're working on to help visualize where the target areas of the draft are at each position according to the leg up rankings. So you can get a sense of like if you're kind of structurally building right now, what the kind of how the the blocks all fit together. Sacrilegious is going to have an article on that, and then I have my rookie content rolling out. I'm going to try to get the first one of those out on Monday. Nice. That'll start with the quarterbacks. And yeah, bunch of podcasts, rolled out 2 podcasts already, and then the podcast with Davis I'll have up tomorrow morning as well. So lots of podcast content for you.
Nice. What about you, Gretch?
I'm still working through the targets per out run posts. I'm working on the last one today. Decided to go to a movie instead of finishing it, but it's going to come out tomorrow. So all those teams will be covered. A lot of in-depth stuff on the pass catchers around the league and the offenses, and going to do some rookie stuff from there and a little bit more on the free agency, I think. But yeah, I mean, that's been a lot of content there. And then, like you said, recorded with Sean the first time in a couple months. We've been taking some time off, but 3 shows this week breaking down free agency stuff. A lot of discussions with him over there. So
awesome. Excited to check that out. For me, dropped my scroll down video on the Deposit Kingdom channel. Hadn't made one of those videos over there in a while, and feel very stoked to get that out there. Basically looking at scroll down from the Badge Bros, applied it to dailies, but then thinking through, are there ways we can really apply scrolling down for undrafted players in our season-long best ball contest, and ways to kind of smartly apply that. And yeah, very happy with how that video turned out.
It was really good. There's a scroll the F up moment in that video too, which is my favorite part of it actually.
Which part?
For Puka and Kyron. If we get Puka and Kyrons that are undrafted in most of the tournament and they rise, we scroll the F up. we get those guys.
Yes, which is kind of one of the key takeaways is there's a temptation to think of scroll the F down through the lens of ADP, but you think it through the lens of how often they've been drafted.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a guy, if there's a really good pick who comes on the radar out of nowhere and becomes a 5th round pick, he's just as good as an undrafted pick, if not better, because you have confidence of his workload or whatever, but he's going to probably come in at 20 to 30% if he comes in as an August pick for the first time. So we talked about it a little bit on Lulz too. I had talked to Sacrilegious too. It seems like some of the brains out there are going to probably try to put together some actual rolling ownership projections for BBM, which doesn't seem like it would be that hard to do when you kind of think through it from using the data and then just like a time model of how far the contest is from being filled. So my guess is some folks are going to have that spun up by some point this year, which would be very helpful for this kind of thought process.
Love it.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Check that out. Appreciate all you guys hanging out in the chat, especially of those of you who flattered me about my conditional formatting. Honestly, I know some of you DM me like, I do have a course I can show you guys kind of like how I built up this skill set over the years, and I won't even charge you. I'll just
and that's overzet.com/learn. Is that right?
Yes. Learn. It is my conditional formatting masterclass. But yeah, you guys are making me blush. It's just like a side gig. It's not like something I put a lot of time into. All right. We appreciate you. We'll see you guys next week on Ship Chasing.